From the treetops of Savannah to scrumptious pears in the kitchen, we've got some big ideas coming your way next. Hi, I'm Alan Smith. Boy, it's cold outside. You know, I'm really happy to have a lot of those late fall, early winter chores behind me, like getting bulbs planted. I hope yours are in the ground. Mine are nicely snuggled in, and I can't wait for the flower display next spring. Just been out in the garden cutting some evergreens to do a little decorating inside. And you know, this is also the time of year we need to start thinking about our little feathered friends in the garden. You see, feeding the birds may not sound like a big deal to you and me, but it is to these guys. You see, I live down here in Zone 7, and I'm on the migratory path for birds flying south for the winter. So I'm glad to lend a helping hand to those that might be stopping by for only a short time, or for those who make my garden home year-round. Today's show is about big ideas that start with small beginnings. For instance, feeding the birds. If everybody just put up a small feeder and fed the birds throughout the winter, think about the collective impact you could make on the bird population across the country. Another example is a tree. From the tiniest acorn, colossal oaks grow. We'll talk about big trees coming up. I have to say I'm also impressed by recycling, particularly unique ways to use materials that might otherwise be discarded. You know, bricks are a common building material both for homes and in the garden. But what happens when a structure made of bricks is pulled down? We'll learn more about this big idea for greener living coming up. But right now, let's head into a break, and when we come back, we'll visit Savannah, Georgia, where we'll find out how a little idea like saving some trees turned into a big idea with beautiful results. Dripping from the treetops in Savannah, Georgia is a wondrous thing called Spanish moss. Walking under this when I was a child was like stepping into some sort of fantasy land. The eerie shroud of gray that ensconced the tree and the sheerness of the hair-like threads gave the setting a hint of mystery. Of course, Spanish moss isn't magical or even mysterious, but it does create a unique atmosphere. But I didn't bring you to Savannah to talk about the moss, rather the trees. Dale Thorpe of the Savannah Tree Foundation tells us how a small group of citizens joined forces to save this magnificent urban forest.
General James Oglethorpe, who was the founder of Savannah, came to Savannah with a plan already drawn up. His original plan was for 24 squares, and at that time they were very utilitarian. On the north and the south sides of the squares, he had tithing lots where each of the 40 families had a small plot. On the east and west side, he had what we now call trust lots, because those lots were reserved for the use of the trustees. And there he had service buildings, the market, the ovens, churches. Almost all of these squares has a church, it seems, one way or another. In 1895, the Georgia State Legislature authorized the first Park and Tree Commission probably in the whole country, and this was in Savannah. This Park and Tree Commission was authorized to take care of all of basically the city's gardening needs. They planted oaks, magnolias, and cabbage palms. Now, ensuing years, understory trees have been planted and beautification. But that didn't happen until the 1960s. Unfortunately, during the 30s, we almost lost this beautiful network of parks that is really the overlying feature of Savannah. Going around these squares with automobiles was tedious, and there were certain city fathers that also felt they were dangerous. So they cut emergency lanes through many of the squares. And it wasn't until the historic movement of the early 60s started that they realized that, once again, these squares are gardens. They are not emergency vehicle lanes. So now the fire engines and the ambulances are relegated to going around the squares like all of us, and the squares have been given back to the pedestrians. As you drive through the city, drive around the squares or out the boulevards, one lasting effect is left with you. It's the trees, it's the canopy. And it's all thanks to Oglethorpe providing the space to plant these trees.
As some of you might recall, I've been building an environmentally friendly house and garden on a tract of land that at one time was a working dairy farm. On this land are several large oak trees, but other than these trees, it was mainly vast pasture. So I needed to add some trees that would fit into the scale of this landscape. So let's just say it took a guy with not only a big idea, but some big machines to make it happen. The story coming up. But first, recycling bricks. We'll take a look at a family business that's taking an earth-friendly approach to this ancient building material. Okay, now this is the color corner part of the show, and you may be wondering, what do bricks have to do with plants? Well, we'll get to that a little later, but first I wanted to show you a project I've been working on. This is the home of one of my design clients, and take a look at the use of brick here. You see, it's the dominant building material for the home, thus it's been pulled out into the landscape. On this project, I'm working with a company called Antique Brick, and they specialize in taking old brick that would normally find its way into the landfill and reusing them in new or renovated projects.
Antique bricks are actual recycled brick that come out of an old building. You know, sometimes when you look at a building, such as ours here, this building was originally built in 1915, and the bricks look just as good today as they did when they were originally used. Well, this building has been well taken care of, and other buildings haven't, and they get deteriorated, and they have to be torn down for a variety of different reasons. So when this happens, a byproduct of this demolition is recycling. The bricks are then cleaned, stacked on pallets, and resold to a new construction job. Most of the time, when you use antique brick, they're from your own locale. And even if they're not, they're generally not shipped that far away, so you save in transportation costs on the front end. Additionally, you have some energy savings because the brick are already fired, they're already made. You're able to use a local labor force to clean those brick and reprocess them, so you save all the way around on energy. On a project that I've been working on lately, the architect had several requirements that we all had to meet. One, the house was in an older part of town, so it had to fit in. It couldn't look like new construction. But at the same time, the brick that we chose for the exterior needed to meet modern, stringent brick requirements. We needed to have the ability to make shapes, and we needed to have a certain quantity available for this project. So when we laid all those facts down, wood mold brick were the natural choice. When you think about what antique brick actually are, they're 50, 70, 100 years old even. And they've been in the wall, and there's no way to replicate that weathering that takes place over time.
On this project, I really can't wait to begin to lay my planting plan against the architecture of the walls, the brick walls. You see, it's so important when you're laying out a garden, when you consider the hardscape or the bones of the garden, whether it's hedges or brick walls or stone walls or even picket fences, that framework work with the planting plan and with the architecture of the house. Now, in this case, we've used brick, and if you look at the house, you can see it has white trim. So I'm going to create a color echo with some of the plantings that I choose. For instance, echoing the white trim will be white azaleas, snowball viburnums, as well as white star magnolias. So you can see how if you echo a color, it can be a unifying force in the landscape with the architecture. Now, another thing you might want to keep in mind when choosing plants is a good balance between what's deciduous, what loses its leaves in the winter, and what's evergreen. Also, when arranging plants, I tend to start with taller plants in the back, in the middle ground, middle-sized plants, and to the front, shorter plants. And when I'm using perennials and annuals for color borders, I like to contrast foliage plants with bloomers. So if you think about some of the foliage plants which really can bring a lot of color, like cannas, coleus, or even copper plant, juxtapose bloomers such as petunias, lantanas, and zinnias, well, you can get a real wow effect. You see, sometimes the simplest ideas, like some of these planting schemes in my rondelle borders, can yield big results. Now, up next, I'll take you out to the construction site for a look at how we brought in some big trees using a few mighty machines. And a little later, a simple dessert that will win you big compliments. Today we're talking about big ideas in the garden, and well, this is, well, very literally a big idea. Robert Sanders of Environmental Landscapes rolled in and planted some great trees that will provide interest in the landscape, but also bring some much needed shade to what was once a cow pasture. So Robert, what's the difference in the success rate between a tree that's, let's take a large tree that's been root pruned and one that hasn't been?
Well, Alan, the root prune tree has about a 92 to 96% success rate. And the reason for that is all of the singular roots, each time they've been pruned, generates 3 to 4 new fiber-like roots. So you're moving an entire root mass that's concentrated closer to the trunk of the tree. And we use drip irrigation, which keeps the water closer to the tree as opposed to letting the roots wander out.
Now, let's say that someone is not going to plant a tree this large in their backyard or their front yard. What sort of things should they look for in buying a tree at the nursery?
In any tree, they should ask for, number one, when was it dug? You want a freshly dug tree and dug while it's dormant. Number two is you want to be sure that it's a good firm root ball and has a protective cage around it and does not have nylon cord. If it has nylon cord, you must remove the cord as opposed to sisal twine. And most importantly, the ball side should commensurate with the size of the tree. For every inch of trunk, you need a foot of dirt.
Robert, if someone wanted to plant a large tree or two in their garden, it really should be planned out in the beginning, shouldn't it?
If there's a master plan and a large tree is specified, we like to get in as soon as the grading is done and put our large trees in with the heavy equipment so that after the fences are up and your garden's in place, there's not a lot of damage done when you go in and install it.
Robert, I am so excited about getting some of these trees planted out here.
Well, this has been a month worth of planning. I'm glad we're here, and it looks like it's not quite as muddy as it has been, so we're going to get them in the ground for you.
Well, that's terrific. It's going to make the place so much more beautiful. While we're on the subject of trees, I have to say we had the most glorious fall, and I'm often asked, what brings out the best color? Well, you see, if you have plenty of rainfall in late summer and early fall, that helps. Temperatures at night drop down to around 45 degrees or even lower, and it's followed by days that are bright and sunny. That can really help bring out the color. You see, the leaves of trees and other plants have a number of complex chemicals in them that are actually responsible for their autumn colors. During the growing season, these colors are masked by chlorophyll, which is green. So in the fall, when there is less sunlight, the chlorophyll production drops off dramatically, revealing these glorious autumn colors. And fortunately, many of those large trees Robert planted will turn out some show-stopping color given the right conditions in years to come. From planting trees to using the fruit of trees, we'll get a simple but elegant recipe using poached pears right after this break. Now, Jennifer Lusk loves to travel, and not long ago she experienced this dish while traveling in Italy, and she recreated it for us.
We're going to do one today that is so simple and is based on really fresh seasonal ingredients, perfect for the winter time, perfect for the fall. I think you're going to like it. We're going to start with 4 pears, and this can be doubled, tripled. You can do one for yourself if you're interested in doing that too. And all you have to do basically is peel them first. So we want to make sure that we leave that pretty stem because there's so much to be said for a good presentation when you're cooking. And with a recipe this simple, like I said, you want to knock them out. So we're just going to take them and pop them down into a pot. And now this is the fun part. Get a bottle of your favorite red wine. And the more full-bodied the wine, the better. And you want to make sure that this liquid comes up and covers the pears, because as they're boiling, if any part of them sticking out, you're going to get kind of a funny difference in color here. So basically we're putting a half a bottle of wine in. And then we want to add some sugar. And this is one of those great recipes where you don't have to measure. You want to put somewhere in the neighborhood of a half cup of sugar in it. And then we want a little vanilla just to spice that flavor up a little bit. Now what we're going to do is put it onto the stove, and you want the highest flame that you have because you got a pretty big pot and you want it to boil. You're going to bring it up to a boil for about 20 minutes. You're going to want to cover this up. It'll help it come to a boil faster, and you don't want to wait all day for that. Next thing we're going to do is the mascarpone cream. Now, you may not be familiar with mascarpone. It is heaven in a dish. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this mascarpone cream, and you can do this in a mixer if you're all into the having the mechanized help, but it's so simple to do. But we also want to zest it a little bit. So you're basically just going to run it over the microplane or whatever it is that you have that you want to use. And then you just want to take your lemon and get some of that great juice in there too. Then we're going to add some sugar. And again, I've put some measurements in the recipe, but it's all about what you like and your taste buds and what tastes good to you. And then finally, we've got some vanilla. Now we're going to use the magical mixing spoon, and you just want to make sure that it's all put together. So once that's all nicely incorporated, it's time to get some pears out. There's many ways that you can serve these pears. I really like to do them when they're still just slightly warm. It's going to melt that mascarpone just a little bit. Another trick for serving these is you want to put just a little dab of it down on your plate. This is going to help your pear kind of stick and hold, otherwise it's going to be floating all over the place. Then I'm going to go get the pears and get them plated up for you. What you're going to notice is that our formerly kind of off-white pears have turned a beautiful red color from all the red wine. Time to plate these beauties up. And just look how nice it looks having that little piece of stem on there, and the mascarpone's going to help it stay put. When you're garnishing this up, be sure that you use the things that you have in the dish. We've also taken some syrup, and basically we just took some poaching liquid and mixed it with a little more sugar, and it makes it nice and thick, and that's just going to give a nice little drizzle. If it's pretty thick like this, just make it go up a little bit higher, and then you're going to get a nicer stream. And just let it kind of get on the cream and on the pears, and here you have it, a simple, elegant, beautiful, and absolutely delicious dessert for your friends.
In this garden I dream of a bed of flowers. Bluebirds sing of the beauty all around us. And every time the sun comes out, I can't help but smile. Oh, no, I can't help but smile.